Okay, think about this for a second. You jump into this massive, gorgeous online world, right? Exploration is everything. But then all your power, like your whole combat style, comes down to maybe one lucky drop, a piece of fruit. It just seems like balancing that huge sandbox feel with these hyper specialized powers would be, well, incredibly tricky. Okay, let's unpack this. Today, we are diving deep into Blox Fruits. You've probably heard of it. It's this absolute giant on Roblox. It's all about exploring, fighting, and building up your character, heavily inspired by One Piece.
Yeah, it's huge. And it's not just popular, it's kind of a masterclass
Yeah.
in designing for that persistent online grind.
Hmm.
We're looking at a game that's kept this massive, very vocal player base hooked for a long time. And they always want more content, more balance. So our mission today really is to figure out that core loop, how collecting these Blox Fruits shapes your strategy, how the world itself supports that endless power climb. And maybe most interesting, how the developers recently pulled off this big shift in communication and, well, just overall game health. It's a real longevity story.
Okay, let's jump straight into the mechanics then, because that seems like the first big choice a player makes. You're not just picking a class, are you? It's deeper than that.
Exactly. You're essentially choosing where to specialize. You've got four main pillars: sword, gun, melee, that's your hand-to-hand, or the Blox Fruit powers themselves. But here's the catch. You only get so many stat points when you level up. It's finite. So if you go all in on your Blox Fruit power, trying to max out its potential, you're inherently taking points away from, say, your sword damage or your gun damage. And often, this is crucial, you might be sacrificing points in defense or health too. It's this immediate high-stakes choice. Specializing hard in one thing can leave you really vulnerable elsewhere.
Which brings us right to the fruits. That's the heart of it, you said. They're like permanent class changes. You eat one and boom, new powers.
Pretty much. And what's really interesting is how the rarity plays into it. It sort of dictates your commitment. You've got common fruits, maybe giving a small elemental boost, but then you go all the way up to mythical. Think dragon, think kitsune. Getting one of those, mythical status means they're incredibly hard to get just by playing, and they give abilities that just completely change how you approach the game.
Right, like the kitsune you mentioned, that's not just a stat boost, it's a whole transformation, right? Turns you into a fox, super fast, fire attack.
Exactly. It changes your avatar, your movement, your whole combat flow.
And then you have something like the dragon fruit, which people want for those huge area of effect attacks, the AoE.
Yeah, dragon's amazing for farming big groups of enemies, doing boss damage.
But what's the catch? Is it just raw power versus something else?
Well, yeah, that's the strategic layer. If you're rocking the dragon fruit, you might be incredible against mobs, but maybe struggle in PvP, player versus player. Because those big AoE attacks, they can be easier to dodge one-on-one compared to, say, a dedicated sword user with focused damage. This constant calculation is what drives the game's meta. The best strategies right now.
Okay, that sounds like a nightmare to balance for the developers, though. You drop a new, powerful, mythical fruit. Doesn't everyone just rush to get that one? Doesn't it make older fruits kind of useless?
It's a really sharp point, and honestly, that was a big player complaint for a while. How they handle it now is through pretty consistent reworks. They don't just add new stuff. They actively go back and update older, maybe less popular fruits, give them new moves, visual upgrades, tweak the numbers. It keeps the meta shifting. It's like they're telling the community, hey, don't just trash that old fruit. It might get a buff next patch and become top tier.
Ah, okay. So iterating on what's already there is just as vital as dropping new content. Interesting. But, okay, you invest all this time, hundreds of hours maybe, getting your build just right. The world itself has to be big enough to handle that power, right? It needs somewhere to go.
Right. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the world structure is built specifically for that. It supports that massive progression curve perfectly. The game's split into different Cs, kind of like in One Piece. You start in C1. Then when you hit a power ceiling, you have to find your way to C2 and eventually C3. And these aren't just cosmetic changes like a new paint job. They're serious difficulty gates. Each new C has way tougher enemies, which forces you to keep grinding, keep mastering your fruit, upgrading gear. Plus, critically, new Cs introduce rare resources you can only find there. Fruits exclusive to that area, secret bosses dropping really valuable stuff.
So pushing forward, exploring the map, is directly tied to getting stronger. You find treasure, unique drops from enemies, quests. It all fuels that need to invest stats you were talking about earlier. But I also read they've added other things to do, not just fighting. Systems like fishing and crafting came up. Is that just side stuff? Or does it matter?
Oh, it absolutely matters. It feels like a really smart move to keep players engaged, especially those who might get burned out on just combat grinding. Fishing and crafting aren't just little mini-games tacked on, they plug right into the main progression loop. For instance, you might need specific crafted items to awaken a Blox Fruit, basically unlocking its ultimate abilities. Or maybe crafting provides essential potions or buffs needed for the really tough, high-level raids. So these activities become pretty essential for playing at the highest level, not just optional extras. It ends up creating this kind of internal economy, too. Players who love combat might need materials from players who prefer to focus on crafting or fishing. It encourages interaction.
That's a perfect lead-in. Let's shift gears a bit and talk about that social side, the economy, the player interactions that keep this whole complex thing ticking. Here's where it gets really interesting. The trading economy sounds absolutely central. You said mythical fruits are super rare, so trading is how most people get them.
Pretty much, yeah. Since getting the exact fruit you want from a random drop is, well, astronomically unlikely, trading becomes essential. Players are constantly swapping fruits, rare cosmetic skins, other valuable items. They're trying to optimize their character build, or maybe hedge their bets on which fruit might get a rework next and become meta.
Is it just fruit for fruit, or is there currency involved?
There is. You've got a Villi, which is the standard in-game money. But then there's fragments. That's a more specialized currency. You earn fragments from harder content, like raids against powerful bosses. And you need fragments for premium stuff, like trying your luck rolling for a random fruit or doing specific upgrades. Because the top-tier fruits are so valuable and rare, the community has basically developed its own valuation system, often pricing fruits in terms of fragment value. It forces you to make smart trades. It's like an economy built around managing luck you trade to guarantee you get what you need instead of just hoping for a lucky drop.
Okay, and getting those fragments, doing the hard stuff, often needs teamwork, right? Which leads to clans, or crews as they call them.
Absolutely. Those crews aren't just social clubs for chatting. They're almost necessary. The really tough bosses dominating in high-level PvP areas. It's practically impossible to do solo consistently. So crews coordinate raids, they pool resources, sometimes they even protect their members who are trying to level up or grind in dangerous zones. The game's difficulty actively pushes social play. Now, about that developer angle we mentioned earlier, the longevity piece. This game, Blox Fruits, it had a bit of a reputation historically. For a long time, communication wasn't great. Updates could be buggy, late, or just drop without much explanation for balance changes.
Yeah.
That kind of instability, it definitely cost them players over time.
Right, but the sources we looked at point to this really big, deliberate change recently, something that really shifted the dynamic with the community.
Yeah, it's almost like a case study in how responding to your players can revitalize a game. The key change: transparency. Simple as that. The dev team started putting out dedicated Blox Fruits blog posts. They started talking about what they were working on, which bugs they were prioritizing, and crucially, they started previewing balance changes, giving players a heads up, like the community had been complaining for ages that certain older fruits felt weak, so the blog post would address that head on. They'd show concept art for a rework, explain the thinking behind changing, say, the ice fruit or the magma fruit. It just proved they were actually listening.
And then the big updates, like the current summer one with new seas and stuff, they were preceded by all this communication. It wasn't just dropped out of the blue.
Exactly. That consistent flow of info, that more reliable content schedule, it gives players clear goals again. Chasing those weekly fruit skins, knowing your favorite fruit might get revamped, grinding the new crafting materials. It all feels more predictable, more stable.
So that's the secret sauce, maybe. The developers realized longevity wasn't just about piling on new features, but about investing in the player experience itself, building trust.
That really feels like the core takeaway here. They took a known weakness, that inconsistent communication, and turned it into a major strength: responsive, predictable development. It feels like they've really secured the game's future, at least for the near term, and shown the fan base they're invested again.
Okay, so let's wrap this up. Summarizing our deep dive. Blox Fruits keeps its massive, dedicated player base hooked because of, 1, that deep strategic trade-off system with the fruits and combat styles, 2, the multi-sea world structure that perfectly feeds that endless progression loop, and 3, perhaps most critically, this recent, very successful pivot by the developers towards clear communication and consistent content.
Yeah, that renewed stability and the better update rhythm, it really suggests the game's best days might still be ahead, where the meta keeps evolving and the community actually trusts the roadmap. It gives both the longtime vets and all the new players joining a solid reason to stick around and keep investing their time. This raises an important question. That commitment to being transparent and actually responding to feedback, it just shows the incredible power the community has to actually change a game's direction. It proved that open dialogue can fix even long-standing problems.
It really does offer a compelling model for any developer managing these big, ongoing online games. So, for you listening, think about this. If a game like Blox Fruits, which had its share of ups and downs with communication, could turn things around so dramatically just by focusing on that dialogue and consistency, what does that mean for other games you play? Could transparency be the ultimate cheat code for keeping these online worlds alive and thriving long term? Something to think about.